Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of The Snake Pit. I'm your host, Son of Bat, and today I'll be talking about The Fly. More specifically, the 1986 remake directed by David Cronenberg, starring Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis. And I don't know where to begin with this movie other than the fact that it's an undisputed classic. I think anyone who's a fan of like body horror or sci-fi horror or science fiction in general really should check this movie out because it is a classic. If you've never heard of The Fly, do yourself a favor, pause this video right now and watch it, rent it, buy it, stream it, do whatever, but check it out because this is like not only a great movie for Halloween season, but it's just a great movie all around. It's actually a prime example of how to do a remake properly. Usually held in high regard with other remakes like The Thing and The Blob, and for good reason, because David Cronenberg really knocked it out of the park with this movie. As you can tell, I've probably spoiled my score or what my review is going to be, but I love this movie. It is so grotesque, so tragic, pretty funny in some parts, but all around just amazing. And it's weird because it runs for like about an hour and a half or an hour and 40 minutes, but it feels like way too short. This movie, like, once it gets going, which from the start it gets going, it just doesn't stop, and then it's over. There's a sequel which is okay. It isn't great. I think it's gotten overhated, but this movie, man, is fucking amazing. There's been talks that Cronenberg might come back and like do a sequel, or I don't know if it was a remake or a sequel or a side piece, like a sidebar, movie or a standalone, but he wanted to come back to this universe. He hasn't yet. Cronenberg's movies are all over the place, amazing. I mean, from horror to like crime, the guy's a master. I personally love his horror films. He's a local artist, local for me because he's from, Canada, more specifically Toronto. Funny enough, on a side note, I actually grew up on the street David Cronenberg supposedly also grew up on. I was like a block away from his old high school. I've seen his name on like the plaque at the school, and it was like a huge trip because maybe I inherited some of that Cronenberg weirdness because I loved these movies from a very young age. I think both The Fly and Scanners were definitely my intro to Cronenberg's movies. Now, which one I saw first, I don't really remember, but I'm pretty sure it was The Fly around this time, Halloween, when I was a kid on AMC. But I also remember I saw Scanners at a really young age. But besides the point, Cronenberg has been a huge part of, my childhood and growing up. Definitely got me into body horror movies because this guy does it right. He makes you think with, the grotesque visuals, because it goes beyond just the grotesque visuals. You get some really good, like, self-reflection on the human condition. This movie has been, called an allegory for many things. Specifically, people have compared this to the AIDS crisis, or a metaphor to the AIDS crisis of the 1980s, because it came out in 86 during the AIDS boom, whereas Cronenberg himself said it's more about terminal illness, specifically cancer. But I find it very interesting that over the past, 30, 40 years or however long since this movie's come out, many people have walked away with their own interpretations on what this is about. And I think that's just a testament to how truly amazing this remake is, and how it went from being like a little science fiction mystery movie to like a straight out philosophical body, almost Kafka-esque body horror movie. It's just amazing. For those of you who don't know, again, this is a remake. The original movie was released in 1958, which is in turn based off a short story from 1957. The original movie from 58 by Kurt Newman starring Vincent Price basically is kind of like a mystery sci-fi movie. Typical atomic monster shit from the 1950s. The story's more or less the same. Guy goes through a teleporter, housefly lands in the teleporter, splices with him, but when he comes out instantly, he has the head and arm of a fly, and he can't speak. And the little housefly has Vincent Price's head, which is, a little cheesy, but it is classic, staple of 50s horror. Also had a couple sequels, too. The short story I haven't read. Apparently it was first released in Playboy, like I said, in 1957 by George Langeland. I hope I had said that right. Sorry, it's early in the morning and I'm pretty fucking fried right now. But yeah, it's sci-fi, 50s sci-fi horror, and then this movie by Cronenberg just took it to a whole nother modern and even beyond modern level. the fact that it parallels many things like disease and the human condition, it's just fascinating. It's very, very well done. As you can tell, I really love this movie. And they've tried to remake it a couple times. Like I said, I think Cronenberg tried to make a sequel at one point, never happened. But as of November 2024, a new film set in the same universe as Cronenberg's was announced to be written and directed by Nikyatu Junsu. I hope I said that right. But that would be pretty cool. You know, I'm actually kind of open to seeing more movies in this universe. Even if Cronenberg isn't directly involved, as long as it has his blessing, I'm all there for it. Again, there was a sequel to this movie a few years later, I believe in 1989, called The Fly 2, where Eric Stoltz plays Brundlefly's offspring. And, you know, I remember not liking it very much when I was a kid and kind of just following the herd and going with everyone else, being like, oh yeah, this movie's shit. But in recent years, I've kind of come around on it. It's a pretty fun monster movie, but in no way does it compare to this one. And then after that, there was actually an unofficial third Fly. If you read comics, IDW, I believe it was, released a graphic novel called, or a comic series that turned into a graphic novel called The Fly Outbreak, which I believe takes, it goes further beyond, like it continues from the second movie, or it's a sequel to the first one. It's been a long time since I read it. I might check that out later, but that's still pretty cool also. But yeah, no, this movie has got a lot of ways it can go, and I'd be interested to see them, you know, return to it. With any Cronenberg movie, really, I'd love to see a sequel. Usually I'm not for sequels or like reboots or anything like that, but I'm always down for a Cronenberg movie because he creates such crazy universes, or like worlds, I should say, with each one of his movies. I wouldn't be surprised if some of them cross over. I mean, I get it. People are tired of all the crossover bullshit in movies, and I'm not suggesting all these movies should take place in the same universe, but I can definitely imagine, like, you know, The Fly and Videodrome and Scanners all coexisting, and Existence all coexisting in the same place. So again, to see if Cronenberg ever came back to this would be awesome, but if not, I could take it or leave it. It's whatever. But anyway, before I go on to rating it and talk more about this movie, I might as well, you know, go over the specs and the plot. For those of you interested in this movie at this point, pause, check it out, come back to it. But I'll try to, like, you know, well, the plot's pretty, I wouldn't say loose, but it's pretty self-explanatory. But I'll try to, like, you know, lightly graze over it and not spoil too much for anyone who hasn't seen it. But anyway, The Fly, directed by David Cronenberg, screenplay by Charles Edward Pogue and David Cronenberg, based on The Fly's story, written in 1957 by George Langeland and released first in Playboy. Produced by Stuart Kornfeld and Mel Brooks. That's right, Mel Brooks, the Mel Brooks from Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, and Spaceballs, amongst many other great movies. Well-known comedic director, for those of you who don't know, produced this movie, and in the 80s, his film company actually produced a few other serious movies. One that immediately comes to mind is David Lynch's The Elephant Man. So that's a pretty cool fact if any of you guys didn't know out there. Of course, starring Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis, and John Getz. Cinematography by Mark Irwin. Edited by Ronald Sanders. Music by Howard Shore. Production companies Brooks Films and SLM Production Group. Distributed by 20th Century Fox and released on August 15th, 1986 with a runtime of 96 minutes. And released, of course, in the United States with the language of English, but it was actually filmed in Toronto, Canada, with a budget of between $9 to $15 million and a box office return of $60.6 million. So, of course, this was a blockbuster, very successful film, well received by critics, and, of course, it was an Academy Award winner for Best Makeup in, of course, 1986. So, yeah, this movie is held in a very high regard, which is amazing for a remake. I keep hitting on the fact that it's a remake, but you don't see it quite often where, I'm going to say in this case, and, you know, in the case of The Thing, the remake surpasses the original by like a mile. I mean, the original, not to take away from it, is amazing, but this movie, it's just in another dimension. Let's just say it's in another field, another dimension, whatever you want to say. It just takes an already great story and elevates it to a level that's just unfucking believable. And I mean, as much as I've said I'd be open to, a sequel, reboot, remake, whatever, coming back to this universe, really there'd be no way to top this original movie, because even the sequel, as okay as it is, it doesn't even get close to this movie. Just wow, this movie's fucking amazing. But anyway, brief summary of the plot. It's about this scientist named Seth Brundle. Definitely brilliant, but eccentric as fuck. And he meets this woman, Ronnie, who's a science journalist, at a press event. He takes her back home to his laboratory under the pretext that he has an invention that will change the world as she knows it. Pretty sure this is how he tries to pick up chicks, and it works this time. And I've seen some people talk about how they can't believe that this worked. This crazy guy just takes her back to his warehouse under the pretext that he has this world-changing thing. I don't think any normal person would do that, but hey, she's a journalist and she needs the scoop. He shows her that he has these telepods that can basically teleport inanimate objects from one area to the other. He explains and shows her with this baboon test that he can't transport live tissue because it basically scrambles, disassembles, and fucks it all up. Puts the baboon through it, and essentially it comes out in the other telepod, and it's inside out. It is brutal. Again, a testament to David Cronenberg's gross out body horror and the effects on this movie. It's just nasty. Speaking of which, there's also a deleted scene later when he becomes the Brundlefly, where he tries to put the other baboon and a cat through the telepod, and they fuse together into this disgusting amalgamation that he has to kill with a lead pipe. Apparently that scene was cut because when test audiences saw it, they immediately turned on Seth's character, and you'll understand why in the instance of this movie, you don't really want the audience turning on your character. You kind of want them to be more sympathetic, and the sympathy angle really plays out well with this movie. But essentially, he starts a sexual relationship with this journalist, Ronnie, and Ronnie, this kind of has a love triangle because her boss, this guy named Stathis, really doesn't like that she's seeing Seth, and he thinks that she's being conned, and he thinks, deep down that she still wants him and shit. But she truly does like Seth, and Seth at first is wary of her because he can tell, she's trying to write this article and expose it, but he doesn't want the telepods to be known to the world yet. They're not ready. There's a lot of other, financiers and shit that'd be pissed if this discovery got released. The company Bartok that he works for, which plays a huge role in the second movie, a lot of people would be pissed off. So he advises her not to release the article, but he tells her, because, she's adamant that she will do it, look, if you stay and document me day by day as I do my process, then you can release a book, and that'd be better than any article you could ever put out, to which she agrees. And then obviously a relationship starts brewing from there. And I think he actually ends up losing his virginity to this chick, which sparks this, this idea, this light bulb goes off in his head where he redesigns the teleporters so that they could actually transport live organic flesh, and he puts the remaining baboon through, and it goes through successfully. He starts celebrating, but his his emotions get the better of him. He becomes kind of jealous of Ronnie and how close she is to her ex Stathis, and he thinks that she's gonna go back to him. So while he's jealous one night and he gets shit-faced, he gets naked, goes in the teleporter, and goes through. But unbeknownst to him, a housefly is in the telepod with him. So over the course of the movie, essentially instead of teleporting, his device is turned into a gene splicer, and it fuses him with the housefly on a molecular level. And over the course of, because I believe this movie takes place over the course of 4 weeks and 6 days. So over those 4 weeks and 6 days, you gradually see Seth turn into this insect man amalgamation, this disgusting nightmare. And you feel bad for him at points because it's so out of his control, and he's so desperate to try to reverse it or fix it or do anything, but he really can't. All hope is lost. There's some gallows humor he employs, but really you can tell he's losing his mind, his identity splitting, and even you can tell the fly consciousness within him starts to become awake and aware. And there's this great line he says toward the end where he's like, I was an insect who dreamt of being a man and I loved it, but now the dream's over and the insect is awakened. And hearkening back onto Kafka, it's just really dark shit, really tragic. And at first it starts off great because he starts to exhibit increased strength, stamina, and he's like fucking his girlfriend like crazy and shit. But he tries to get Ronnie to go through the teleporter with him, but she doesn't trust it. And in the first few days, she notices like these bug like fly hairs, literal fly hairs coming out of his back. So she refuses to go through the teleporter, and Seth loses his shit and he kicks her out. He goes to a bar the next day, gets into an arm wrestling match with this guy, and basically wins a bar whore as a trophy by breaking this dude's arm. And he takes her back, and he tries to coerce her to go into the teleporter. But then again, of course, we get that she's like, no, and he's like, why? And she's like, I'm afraid. And he's like, you shouldn't be afraid. And then Gina Davis just shows up and goes, be afraid. Be very afraid. So she runs out, and then you start seeing more of Seth's psyche deteriorate along with his physical form. He's got these fly hairs coming out of his face. His skin's all rashed and gross looking. His ear falls off, and as his body parts fall off, you don't really see it too much. But later in the movie, he has what he calls the Brundle Museum of Natural History, and you can see his body parts, his wiener in a jar, and his ear and his teeth and his fingernails, and I think one of his nuts in another jar. This guy's falling apart, and you can kind of see where the comparison to the AIDS crisis comes up, because there's this whole subplot where Gina Davis is wigging out because she's pregnant. She finds out halfway through the movie that she's pregnant with Seth's kid, and she's scared that it's going to come out deformed or mutated. There's this great nightmare sequence where she gives birth to a maggot, a giant bloody maggot, and of course David Cronenberg plays the gynecologist as a sick little cameo. But yeah, this movie is just so it's horrific, but it's sad because everyone is just so broken by the end of it. Stathis kind of comes around and becomes the hero, like I mentioned earlier, because he goes from being an arrogant, yuppie, jealous asshole to genuinely showing that he does care about Gina Davis, and to, I guess, a degree, maybe not so much Seth, but he cares enough that he's gonna go and put this fuck out of his misery because he's turning into a monster. There's actually a deleted scene also, I don't think it was ever filmed. It was written but never filmed, where Seth kills this homeless woman who notices him feeding out of a garbage bin. In this movie, he actually doesn't kill anyone. He injures Stathis quite a bit. He vomits his vomit drop on him and melts his hand and his foot, but he never actually kills anyone. Which again also adds to the idea that you're feeling sympathy for this guy. You don't want to outright hate him and think he's a total monster. But it's kind of hard too, especially at the end, because you definitely see his humanity slipping. The whole movie ends with him taking Gina Davis from the abortion clinic and begging her to keep the child because it's the last remaining part of his humanity that's left. Stathis shows back up at Brundle's lab with a shotgun ready to put him down, but then he gets the jump on Stathis, melts his hand and his foot, shoves Gina Davis into a teleporter, and his plan is that he's gonna put her, she's a few weeks pregnant, so there's two of them, into the teleporter, and he was gonna go into the other one, and hopefully all three of them, him, her, and the baby, would meld together into a completely different being and come out of teleporter 3. Really fucked up, and again, it just shows you how bestial and unhinged he's become mentally. Again, that doesn't work, so Stathis shoots the cables connecting Gina Davis's pod to the computer, so she gets out, and then Brundle Fly, as he calls himself, smashes the glass door, and he gets out. But right as he gets out, the teleporter activates, so him and the teleporter get fused together, and you can even see it when it happens on the computer screen. All these number sequences go out erratically because the computer doesn't know how to make heads or tails of it. It essentially is splicing this man-fly hybrid with a machine, so when he comes out in his quote final transformation, he's a hunk of man insect flesh with fucking metal protruding out of him and cables and shit, and it's a really fucking twisted sight. It's a really sick mix of inorganic fucking materials, cables and metal and flesh and insect flesh. It's disgusting. And of course it ends with him getting the shotgun. Gina Davis picks up the shotgun and Brundlefly grabs it, and he basically just puts it to his head and asks her through pantomime to blow his fucking head off, and she does, where the movie just ends. It's brutal. It's fucking viciously brutal. And throughout the course of the movie, because I kind of didn't really explain it that well, you see him both mentally and physically deteriorate, and the stages in which this happens is really crazy. At first it's like rashes on his face, and apparently, from character dialogue, apparently also from looking terrible, he smells terrible and shit. And then also like these little black fly hairs along with the rash start protruding out of his back and face, and then his skin starts getting all like bumpy and rotten looking and shit, and then his body parts start falling off. He has to like do these things called vomit drops, where he regurgitates this digestive enzyme on his food so he can slurp it back up and eat it. And then it gets to a point where he kind of looks like the Elephant Man. Like he's just got like body parts are missing. He's just like a tumorous mass kind of. And before he puts Ronnie, his girlfriend, into the telepod, she breaks off his lower jaw by accident, which basically starts the final transformation where his human shell completely splits and this insect man creature emerges from the flesh cocoon. And then obviously, of course, the final stage where he's trapped in the teleporter and the machine fuses him with machine parts, and he's just, like I said, a flesh mass with metal sticking out. The effects are fucking brutal in this movie, as with like pretty much any Cronenberg body horror movie, except for Crimes of the Future. That movie was fucking garbage, but we'll talk about that another time. But yeah, The Fly is definitely a staple in Cronenberg's resume. It is a classic amongst horror, science fiction, and body horror. I couldn't praise this movie high enough. It's a high recommend. I definitely give this a 10 out of 10. Some people might not enjoy this movie. If you don't like body horror, you will not like this movie. It is very fucking gross. It's very I wouldn't say squishy, but there's a lot of fluids, a lot of like body part, like fingernails and shit falling off. So if you're easily queasy or squeamish, you're gonna hate this movie. If you love practical effects or gore effects, especially 80s practical gore effects, you're gonna love this movie. It is amazing. Again, a great movie to watch around Halloween. I remember way back in the day, I think I saw this again. I think this is the first Cronenberg movie I saw, and I'm pretty sure I saw it on AMC Fear Fest. But yeah, it's either this or The Scanners was the first one I saw. But I remember the first time I saw The Fly, I was like blown away, especially because it was on TV, and they showed quite a bit, for this movie. And again, like I said, it flies by like fast as fuck. So I mean, I don't think there was much they could cut out to begin with, but like I was surprised as a kid like how much they showed. And then rewatching it now, it's like, yeah, this movie holds up. It's still nasty, but like, as I've become more emotionally mature as an adult, this movie has just gone from being a monster movie to like a very tragic story. And, it makes you think. Like I watched this movie the other day and I'm still thinking about it to the point that I was like, you know what, the next review is going to be The Fly. And I'm not disappointed that I chose it, because yeah, this movie's fucking amazing. If you get the DVD of this, there's a few floating around. The one I'm reviewing right now, I believe, is I don't think it's the 20th anniversary. It just says collector's edition and the number's 20. The sequel DVD is by the same company, which would be 20th Century Fox, and it has a 21 on it, so it's kind of confusing. But the one we're looking at here, of course, all white cover. It's the 2-disc special edition. And disc 1, of course, has the movie with a full-length audio commentary by David Cronenberg. But disc 2 is loaded with fucking features that I'm gonna fucking probably check out today. It has all new documentaries covering all 3 stages of the Fly production, all titled Larva, Pupa, and Metamorphosis, respectively. Deleted scenes with storyboard and script comparisons. Never before seen alternate ending, which I believe has Ronnie and Stathis getting together at the end, to which Jeff Goldblum actually really hated that ending, if that is the one I'm thinking of, because... And also, I believe the producer said, too, once your hero dies, the movie's over. To have an ending like that, where she just hooks up with Stathis right after Seth dies, would be in poor taste, in my opinion. So I'm glad that got cut. But that could be a different alternate ending. It could be... I don't know which one it is. I'm going to check it out and find out. Rare test footage of makeup and visual effects. Also, the Brundle Museum of Natural History featurette, where you get to see, like, I guess, unused... I think I've seen this before. It's like unused models for what the fly creature or the Brundle fly creature would have looked like. So that's really sick if you're into makeup art and shit. George Langeland's original short story. So apparently I got that already. Charles Edward Pogue's original screenplay. David Cronenberg's screenplay rewrite. interactive articles with stills and video clips from Cinefix and American Cinematographer, promotional featurettes, still photo galleries, and original teasers, trailers, TV spots, and more. Again, another note here: DVDs. James Roll from Angry Video Game Nerd has made this point before, but DVDs are so much better than Blu-rays because, like, right there on 2 discs, you got so much, like, minutes and hours of footage, like extra shit, like if you're into this movie to, like, dive more into it, which I miss. DVDs nowadays are pretty fucking bare bones. It's usually just play movie, scene selection, or the trailers they show you at the very beginning of the DVD. This right here, on top of being a masterpiece, just comes with a treasure trove of bonus features that I think any fan of this movie would appreciate. And I really miss when DVDs did that. I know for a fact Blu-rays don't really put that much effort in unless it's a stupid, crazy, expensive special edition. But I believe I got this DVD back in the day for like $10, so I imagine it would probably be about the same price. It's not a very rare movie. It's a well-known one. So I imagine if you try to find a copy of this, it's not going to be very difficult. And I recommend you do, because this movie is a fucking classic. Like I said, staple in science fiction, horror, and body horror. David Cronenberg's The fucking Fly, 10 out of fucking 10. Canadian classic, boys. If you like this episode, don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. I don't know what I'm going to do for the next one. Halloween's getting close. Who knows what it will be, but, do what I'm doing right now. Get a nice wake and bake going, pack a bowl, rip it, and enjoy the day. Peace.